कविं पुराणम् अनुशासितारम् अणोरणीयासमनुस्मरेद्यः सर्वस्य धातारमचिन्त्य रूपम् आदित्यवर्णं तमसः परस्तात्.
This verse gives pointers, indicators to Brahman. This verse is meant for contemplation, preparing the mind for meditation. So what he's saying here is, one who meditates on the all-knowing, the ancient, the all-ruler, smaller than the smallest, sustainer of all, of inconceivable form, self-luminous like the sun, beyond darkness. And then he continues to the 10th verse. But what he's describing here is, what is that resplendent being? So far, he's just been referring to Brahman. But Brahman is something that we don't understand. Even literally, Brahman means, Bruhat means great, humongous is the word, vast. But since we don't know what it is, how are you going to think of something that you don't know? So he has to give some indication of what that entity is that we need to think about. And these indicators cannot be captured by the intellect. The fundamental thing is Brahman is beyond perception. You can't see God, you can't hear God, you can't taste, smell, touch God. You can't feel God with your emotions. You can't conceive God with your intellect. And yet, they've come out with such brilliant indicators that all of them put together give you some idea of what it must be like. So, these indicators are Kavim. Kavi literally means poet. What is interesting is that those people who reach the state of realization were able to brilliantly combine aesthetics with ethics. And it is true. As a person evolves, one of the things that happens is the refinement sets in. So the crudeness and the jarring behavior, conduct, all that drops. And you become a highly refined, highly attractive personality, like Krishna is described as an irresistible, charming personality that he had. So much so that anyone who came in contact with him went completely gaga over. This is the description of Krishna. So, realized soul is a kavi. How does he express himself? He beautifully blends poetry with philosophy so that it is endearing, so that it is attractive to us. You know, any literature for that matter, even if it is prose, has an element of poetry in it. The only form of literature that is completely devoid of poetry is the kind of language that you hear in courtrooms, legal language. Yeah, that's why it's so boring. You can't read it. If you were to read one legal letter, by the end of it, you feel like putting it down. So, here is a philosophy, here is a message that immediately endears itself to you because of this exquisite poetry that there is in it. So, realized souls were poets. But Kavim literally means all-knowing, that pure consciousness which enables you to know whatever it is that you know. Puranam, ancient. There are two ways of looking at it. One is what Shankaracharya called as Pura api nava eva iti puranaha, means it is ancient and yet it is ever fresh. Any number of times you read the Gita, any number of times you approach this subject, it reaches out to you, it touches you. It appears fresh. This is the quality of it, because it is the truth. So, Puranam means that, but also Puranam philosophically, intellectually, it means beyond, it's ancient because it's beyond time. Time was born with the second experience. Time is the interval between two experiences. But Atman was present even before the first experience. Therefore, it is poetically referred to as ancient, before time. Anushasitaram. The law of causation functions in the world. Everything that happens in the world is governed by a set of laws set in place beautifully. Never does the law falter. Have you ever heard of a person jumping out of the 20th floor and going floating? No. The law of gravity functions meticulously all the time. So also all the other laws. So there seems to be a governor. Brahman, God, is that entity which has put all the laws in place and governs all the laws. Ruler, all ruler. Incidentally, a good administrator is one who doesn't need to get after people. A good administrator is one in whose presence everything functions beautifully. Isn't that true? And God is the best administrator because Brahman doesn't have to make his presence felt. In Brahman's presence, all the laws function meticulously. Anoraniyam sama, minuter than the minute, smaller than the smallest. In the Upanishads particularly, in describing Brahman, they give opposites. On the one hand, they say larger than the largest and smaller than the smallest. Which means what? It's all pervading. It pervades every aspect of the universe exactly like butter pervades every particle of milk. This is a brilliant analogy that they give throughout the scriptures. In fact, the life of Krishna itself is an indicator. Sarvasya dhataram, supporter of all. It supports everything, just as gold supports all ornaments, the ocean supports all waves, the rope supports the snake that you see, the sand supports the mirage. Similarly, Brahman supports everything in the universe. Achintya rupam, formless. It is impossible to capture Brahman with the intellect, is beyond the intellect. Aditya Varnam, self-effulgent, brilliant. In the Upanishad, they show the young student, Ishavasya Upanishad, reaching the state of realization, and he dramatizes it by saying, take the cover off this brilliant sun. So, Atman, Brahman is always equated to light. That's why you do the Gayatri mantra at sunrise. Self-effulgent means Atman does not need any other source of light or knowledge to understand it. It illumines it just as the sun illumines itself, Atman illumines itself. And tamasap parastat, beyond darkness, beyond ignorance. Why he says beyond ignorance is because Atman is that knowing principle which illumines both what you know as well as what you don't know. You might say confidently, I know English. As emphatically you will say, I do not know Persian. Unless there is someone here who knows Persian. Right? So, it is that entity in you which is aware of what you know. It also illumines what you don't know. Tamasa parastat. And all this is you. So when you look at all these, Kavim, Puranam, Anushasitaram, you don't think of something way beyond the clouds, beyond the galaxies. This, what he's describing, is me. And that floors you completely. Okay? So, what are the take-home points? What are the points that you've learned from this hour and a half here? Number one, taking versus giving. I would seriously recommend that every one of us goes home today and thinks over it, reflects over it, and experiments with it. And then you come to the conclusion what principle you must follow. Niyatam karma, obligatory duty. The entire country for centuries together has eulogized niyatam karma, obligatory duty. And every aspect of Indian life is permeated with this fragrance of obligatory duty. And if you want to prosper, if you want the country to prosper, if you want the world to be blessed, you have to get back to niyatam karma, obligatory duty. So fix a goal, think of that goal constantly, sarveshu kaleshu, but act in the world, perform your obligation. This is a brilliant technique by which you extricate yourself from attachment to the world and get anchored in the self. Consistency is important, is the most important factor. And this is one thing that we as Indians don't seem to have. Inconsistency. And the last is Abhyasa Yoga. When you perform this Abhyasa Yoga, which are Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, or the Ashtanga Yoga that we spoke of, your mind becomes tranquil and it is ready for meditation.